I don't know about you, but sometimes I make things so complex that I lose out on the beauty of the simplicity of those things. Often this is what happens to us in the Christian life. In fact, the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Corinth and he said that he was concerned that they might become deceived, just as Eve was deceived, and lose the simplicity and the purity of their faith in Jesus Christ. It's that simplicity that God uses and blesses so many times. I remember when I was in Siberia, and by the way, I just love to be around new believers, new Christians, because they have that simplicity of faith, and that simplicity of faith encourages me to go back to my first love. But I was with a man who was a new believer. His name was Vladimir, and we were flying to Siberia. And we had to fly through Moscow. And in the Moscow airport, there was a shutdown of the airport for 2 days and didn't know what we were going to do. We were tired. And Vladimir left and he came back and he said, hey, Sammy, I know what we can do. I said, what can we do, Vladimir? He said, we can't get to Siberia to hold our evangelistic meetings. I know what we can do. We can hold them right here in the airport. I said, Vladimir, they'll never let us do that. He said, sure they will. He said, come with me. And he brought me to an area of the airport, and I went there, and he said, all right, I'll get their attention, and then you preach. And so he just clapped his hands, and I said, Vladimir, don't have anyone's attention. He said, preach. And I started preaching, and crowds of people began to gather around. And as I began to speak about Jesus, I looked into the eyes of the people, and tears were running down the faces of people. And I finished my message, and he said, invite them to come to Christ. And so I said, if you would like to know Christ, I want you to pray with me right here. And many people right there in that Moscow airport prayed and gave their hearts to Jesus Christ. Oh, what a great day it was. Well, we were finally able to get to Siberia, and when we got there, there was a snowstorm, and we couldn't get from the airport to the place where we were going. No problem for Vladimir. He said, Sammy, wait right here. And he left, and I didn't know where he'd gone, what he was doing. He came back about an hour later, and he said, Sammy, I have a helicopter that's coming to pick us up. And sure enough, this military helicopter comes. We get into the helicopter, about 20 other people get in. And after he talks to them, he comes and sits down next to me, and he says to me, he says, Sammy, he says, guess what's going to happen? I said, what's that, Vladimir? He said, whenever we land this helicopter, the pilot's going to keep the door closed for 10 minutes, and you can tell the people about Jesus. I said, okay, Vladimir. And I was just so enthralled with the simplicity of Vladimir's love for Jesus Christ. He didn't have this complex faith. It was just a simple faith. And God blessed that, and God used that. And many people came to know Christ because of Vladimir's simplicity. Don't lose the simplicity and the purity of your faith in Jesus.